You find yourself in this strange place. It is the same forward and back. There are a myriad of twists and turns with no sign of light in either direction and no indication of what may lie within the darkness. Along the walls are portraits, once ordinary people who were just like you, forcefully altered to become a gallery of rogues, along with the bizarre maladies that made them that way, through strange scenarios that left a grotesque scar along the faces of their very souls. Now you, discovering yourself to be in a place with no beginning and no end, with only the corner of the next turn to guide you in the darkness, and being surrounded by those who had come before and could not escape, have found yourself here, in the twisted corridor. We've all had times in which we wish we were someone else, someone more popular, more attractive, more affluent. You may have wondered to yourself, what would it take to get what they have? How much better would my life be? Could I, perchance, achieve my dreams simply by making myself like them? But the flip side of these questions is a plethora of countervailing queries, not the least of which is how much change you can make before you aren't yourself anymore. Are you merely an imposter now? Rarely are these questions considered, but it's these precise queries that can land you right in the middle of the twisted corridor.
Jameson to Hallsy.
Hallsy here. Go ahead, Captain.
We have an unexpected visitor preparing to dock. I know your shift doesn't start for another couple of hours, but I'd appreciate it if you were there to greet her as my first officer.
Of course, Captain. I'm on my way. Who is this, anyway?
I'll explain on the way to the launch bay. And Henry.
Yes, sir.
I promise I'll send you back to bed in a half hour or less.
Thanks, Monty. I'm on my way. Sorry to call you last minute. Seems like there's always something demanding my attention on this station. Well, you know me. I aim to serve, and occasionally to please. And that's why I wouldn't have anyone else as my right-hand man. So, who's our esteemed guest? Apparently, she's an up-and-coming scientist, a neurophysicist to be precise. She's been working over in the Epsilon sector and has discovered some process that will help our fleet's medical AI with something or other. To be honest, the technical jargon all flew over my head. The Epsilon sector? That's a long ways from here. I know, and that's why we're here now. Communications out that way are tenuous at best. It's too far for clear signals to reach out, or for much travel. The good doctor's shuttle only showed up on scans a couple of hours ago. I ran it by command, who wants to know what she has to say. Ah, and this station is the closest to her with our advanced medical labs and access to our genius minds back on Earth. That's why they pay you the big bucks, Henry. Traveling from Epsilon in a shuttle. I know it's the fastest way, but I can't even imagine being that cramped for that long. Apparently, she thinks that her findings are extremely significant and needed to get them to us as quickly as she could. That's the impression I got when I spoke to her earlier, at any rate. Well, I'm sure Dr. Rodney will be glad for another medic to jabber with. I try to humor him, but it's not really my thing either. Welcome to Station 27. I'm Captain Monty Jameson, and this is my first officer, Commander Henry Hallsy.
A pleasure, Captain. Commander. This is my pilot, Norbert Hansen.
How do you do? Pardon, Doctor, but may I have your name as well? You'll have to excuse the commander. I called him out of his sleep cycle and haven't been able to fill him in on all the details.
Oh my, well now I'm truly honored. My name is Georgine Slovenia, but you're welcome to call me Sil, like my friends do. Now please, don't stay here any longer on account of me. Get back to your rest.
Oh, I'm perfectly all right, Dr. Sylvania. I was planning to join you for the tour of the station.
Nonsense! A good officer needs to be rested, especially a second-in-command. I insist. That is, if the captain has no objections.
Well, certainly not. You're most kind, Dr. Sylvania. You're dismissed, Commander Hallsy. Thank you, sir. A pleasure to meet you, Doctor.
And you, Commander. I'm sure we'll speak again shortly.
Right this way, Doctor. Mr. Hansen. Georgine Sylvania. Captain, you wanted to see me? Yes. Come in, Henry. Sit down, Henry. Is, something the matter? I should think so. I've had a call from command about something you did while you were supposed to be on your sleep cycle, and while I was supposed to be giving a tour.
I was unaware that a little research would trigger a report from command to you.
It does when your research involves requests for extremely classified information related to one of the deadliest incidents in history. But they denied my request. As well they should have. Do you have any idea what you're poking into? It's not even something we're supposed to mention, let alone research. It took all of my powers of persuasion to avoid command sending out an inspector to make sure that the crew was still functioning properly.
I apologize for the trouble I caused. I take full responsibility.
What in the world were you doing poking around for information like that? I recognized Sylvania's name and thought she might have been part of that crew. Are you serious? Because I am not in a joking mood.
Yes, sir. I'm serious.
Computer, maximum security mode, please. Authorization Jameson Delta 48260. There. Now there's no monitoring from the computer.
Monty, why do we need maximum security? I wasn't going to rehash the whole thing.
A wise decision, but you obviously don't know what actually happened, so let me explain it to you.
I do know what happened. My grandparents were on that ship.
Henry, I didn't realize.
I didn't want you to know, or anyone. It was really hard to even get into basic training. I might be the only descendant of anyone on that crew who did, though I wouldn't know anyone else by surname. My parents were denied when they applied for the fleet. I was put under severe scrutiny for a really long time. Actually, until I was transferred here and given the commander rank.
I had no idea. I'm sorry, Henry. Surely you understand then why your little stunt concerns me.
Of course. My great-uncle, Grandpa's brother, told me about it when I was a kid. Nobody was ever supposed to carry the knowledge of what happened on the Destiny cruiser.
If maximum security wasn't on, I'd have to confine you to quarters for even mentioning it.
It was a science vessel, back when we had only just begun building alliances with our neighboring galaxies. The fleet was a new concept back then. Interplanetary governments were friendly, but tenuous. They were testing out wormhole technology, a machine to open up artificial holes for travel, but something went wrong. A chemical explosion, wiping out scores of ally ships and poisoning the atmospheres of 3 inhabited worlds. The whole thing was deemed a horrible accident and buried by the collective governments in order to keep some semblance of peace among us. The plans for the wormhole machine are sealed in a top-secret location, never to be seen again. Most suspect sabotage, but no one knows who it could have been, so descendants were largely barred from the fleet, including nearly myself, 2 generations later.
Well, you definitely know what you're talking about. But that was almost 80 years ago. Your grandparents must have been quite young.
They'd only just had my dad and left him back home with their parents. It was only supposed to be a short-term mission.
Well, if you know this much, you probably also know that there weren't any survivors. There wasn't even any wreckage. It was probably incinerated by the chemicals in the explosion. And Sylvania is hardly a senior citizen. The incident happened several decades before she was born, possibly before even her parents were born. And even if there was a Sylvania on board the Destiny cruiser, she could hardly be related, stationed all the way out in the Epsilon sector, now could she?
I admit the evidence is slim, but I swear my great-uncle mentioned a Georgine Sylvania when rattling off the crew members he'd interacted with before the mission. And haven't you noticed that Sylvania and Hansen are both human? I mean, how many humans are working underground in science in the Epsilon sector? There's a reason why we're the closest human outpost. Why would any human go all the way out there if not absolutely necessary? And why make a career there? Why would someone as old as Hansen risk such a long and rough flight at his age? And nobody seems to know she exists? I mean, you had to tell command about her rather than the other way around. Doesn't this all seem a bit odd to you?
I think that you're overthinking some things, Henry. It's not unheard of to have a few stray humans in Epsilon. We can't keep track of every soul in the universe. And stranger things have been discovered by a no-name like Sylvania. I know what it would mean to you to clear your family name and to prove what happened. But do you realize how gargantuan a task that is? And how many enemies you would make? Your life would be over, Henry. And I don't want to see that happen to you. Let Sylvania do her work, and don't worry about how similar her name might be to one you heard as a kid. She'll be gone in a couple of days, and you won't have to worry about it anymore. And please, don't reach out to HQ anymore with requests for information. That's how we both get in trouble.
You're right. Sorry about that. I should have known better. It's all right. But next time, just talk to me about it first. Sure thing. Thanks, Monty. No problem. You're dismissed.
Computer, return to regular security protocols. Authorization Jameson Delta 48260.
Hey, Henry, why don't you invite Sylvania and Hanson to your quarters for dinner tonight? I feel that would be a fitting show of goodwill since you only briefly met her last night. Plus, she's using an inordinate amount of energy in her quarters. Perhaps you can find out what that's all about. I swear that every scientist is on a mission to have some invention hooked up anywhere they can. I'm on it, and I'll report any cosmic hair dryers I discover.
Dr. Rodney, may I come in? The door's open.
Ah, come in, Commander! And how may I assist you today?
Well, you seem to be in a good mood.
Ah, yes. Well, today has been a banner day.
Oh, then I take it your work with Dr. Sylvania has been proving fruitful.
In the utmost, Commander. Come, see what we've done.
Whoa, what is that thing?
You tell me, Commander. What does it look like?
Well, it looks like a tangle of wires and metal plates hanging from the ceiling. How did you even get it to stay up there?
Oh, tisk tisk, Commander. As usual, you are missing the point. This tangle of wires is our future. It will allow us to use our ship's AI to more accurately diagnose a patient's condition and to rewrite the body to fight off diseases or repair damage naturally. We can teach the body to regulate itself and survive for centuries with only a slight guiding of the mind.
Ah, so that's what these helmets dangling from the machine are for then. They send the signals into the brain.
Exactly. Now you're understanding. How exciting, yes?
But why are there two helmets?
I'm so glad you asked, Commander. Because the brain is such a complicated organ, if our AI technology is not able to adequately reprogram the body, we can connect another person who has already battled the same or a similar disease or injury and use their brain's response patterns to directly inform the patient's brain. It's all so wonderful.
I admit to being a little out of my depth here, Doctor, but if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, doesn't this machine have the potential for mind control if used incorrectly? Or potentially turning someone into a completely different person if something were to go wrong?
Ah, your concerns are well-founded, Commander, but I assure you that Dr. Sylvania and I are taking every precaution imaginable. We wouldn't dare test this on a human being until we were absolutely certain of its viability.
Speaking of Dr. Sylvania, have you seen her around?
Well, it seems I've arrived not a moment too soon. I was taking a nap in my quarters. And what a wonderful progress you've made in the meantime, Rodney.
Thank you, Syl. This project has proven most interesting.
I apologize for taking up so much space with my little invention here. The Epsilon sector isn't exactly rife with the latest technology. I had to work with what I could get. But I'm sure that over time the fleet will find a way to reduce its size.
I'm sure you're right. And until then, simply getting this machine to work will be a miraculous breakthrough in the world of medicine and science alike.
My apologies to abruptly change the subject, Dr. Sylvania, but I was curious to know if you and Mr. Hanson would care to join me for dinner. I have ample amenities in my quarters.
Why, Commander, I'd love to, but I did notice your dining area, and was curious to try the food there. Would that be suitable?
Of course. I'll meet you there at, say, 1900?
I look forward to it, Commander. I trust our conversation to be most enlightening. I must say, Commander, that your station's chef must be among the best in the fleet. That was a dinner to die for.
Well, I'll make sure to mention your compliments to him when I get the chance. Mr. Hanson couldn't join us?
He was so tired. Before you stopped by the medical bay, he was helping to cart the pieces of that big machine all across the station. And as you can see, he is getting up in his years. He needed a rest.
That's understandable. How did you two meet, anyway?
We were both working in Epsilon. Me as a scientist, him as a freight hauler pilot. Being the only humans within such a wide span, we decided to stick together.
Please, don't answer if this is too personal.
Nonsense, ask me anything.
Well, how did you wind up in Epsilon in the first place? And why did you stay?
I feel that question is rooted with something deeper, Commander. Would I be correct?
Well, you must admit that it is unusual to find a human making a career in Epsilon. Especially one as young as you.
Oh, Commander, you flatter me. Truth be told, I am a bit older than I tend to look. And you're correct. The entire idea is strange. I simply felt that I wasn't living up to who I could really be here, or on Earth.
So you are from Earth, then?
Oh, yes, that's where my family line comes in. I'm the first one to really live away from it.
What do you mean that you weren't living up to who you could really be?
Oh, I don't know. It was a general feeling of being unappreciated, unloved as who I was there. I needed to go somewhere different, be someone different. Have you ever felt like you weren't who you were supposed to be?
Frankly, I've never considered it. I've always been who I am. I'm not supposed to be anything. I suppose there were times in which I questioned what I ought to do with my life, but as far as the core of my being, I've never had an inkling that I was wrong as I am somehow. My apologies. I'm not exactly sure what you're implying.
No apology necessary, Commander. You are, in fact, quite close with your suppositions to what I'm communicating. I wasn't right as myself on Earth, so I needed a fresh start, as far away as I could get.
But why give up all that you had on Earth for nothing? My apologies for any offense, but the planets of Epsilon are all lawless wastelands.
But that's exactly the point, Commander. It's my place, a place I can be myself, with the people who accept me for who I really am. I am free to make my own rules and govern myself, which is exactly the freedom I've always wanted deep down. You might say it was my destiny.
I see.
There's more you want to say, Commander. Speak up. You won't offend me. I promise.
It's just, for how accepting you claim your community on Epsilon is, they didn't seem to have much use for your universe-changing machine. You had to come to the fleet to get any attention. Why not use the tech to transform the Epsilonian planets and push them toward the technological and societal status of the fleet planets?
It's that kind of homogeneity that has plagued us for eons, Commander. The idea that there's one standard, one norm, and all must bow to it. That kind of intolerance is exactly why I left Earth in the first place.
And yet, you've brought your machine back to the people of Earth to accept.
Why not? The Epsilon sector may not look like much, but at least all ideas are heard and validated. And if it works there, it should work everywhere else. Why shouldn't the fleet accept my ideas?
Well, I agree that your invention has a lot of merit, but let's not conflate that with all ideas being treated as equal. If we allowed every man to govern himself and then have equal say as to what was right and wrong, we'd fall into chaos. It would feel a lot like, well, like Epsilon.
I don't blame you, Commander. Your views are, as to be expected, close-minded. But it's simply how generations on Earth have been raised. And the fleet was the worst thing to happen to inclusivity. But I can tell you are an upstanding man. You're a good soul. And I do so appreciate your thoughts. It's been surprisingly edifying.
I'm just glad I didn't scare you off. I'd get in big trouble if our guest of honor were to complain about the second-in-command being too open with his opinions.
Why, Commander, with an outlook like that, you'd fit right in on an Epsilon planet.
Well, I'm glad we can find some common ground, even if it's only that. Shall I show you back to your quarters?
Oh no, I think I'll put a little more time in with Dr. Rodney before turning in for the night, and I can show myself the way.
Very well, then. Have a good evening, Doctor.
Please, call me Syl. Good night, Commander.
You wanted to see me? I just wanted to check in. How are things going with our guest?
She's certainly intriguing. Confounding is a better word.
Oh, anything worth sharing?
I don't know, just... Have you ever questioned who you are and who you're supposed to be?
I'm afraid I don't understand the question.
See, I didn't either. She has some ideas that she ought to be someone other than who she is. Says Epsilon is her dream world, but she wants to be accepted here, too.
Accepted? Does she have a troubled past?
I have no idea. I tried to ask her how she wound up in Epsilon, how she met Hansen, who she was, but she skillfully dodged all my questions.
Well, that is rather prying.
Yeah, I guess so. I still think it's troubling, Command not knowing anything about her when she's capable of making technology like this out of nothing.
Now, you're not still poking around in what we talked about earlier, are you?
No, don't worry. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still a little curious, but honestly, she's baffling enough on her own.
She's an eccentric. It's nothing new. I wouldn't worry about it. Many of the founders of our most advanced tech And even the earliest forerunners of what would become the fleet that we hail as heroes today were known to be a little off-kilter to those who knew them personally. I never really thought about it that way. I guess I should just let her do her work and move on. Exactly. Even if she really isn't satisfied with the person she is, I would imagine that all she really wants is to be left alone to complete her own journey, and this invention seems to be part of it. True. I'll leave her to it then. Good. And don't worry about her own internal issues. They're hardly contagious. By the way, did you find out about that power drainage? Oh, I completely forgot. But Hansen is in there, according to her. Then perhaps you could ask him about it. I'll head over there right now. And hey, thanks for the talk. That's why they paid me the big bucks. Mr. Hansen? It's Commander Hallsy, sir. Just checking in on you. May I come in? Mr. Hansen, are you there? Computer, locate Norbert Hansen, please. There are no life signs for that designation. What? That doesn't make any sense. I'll have to ask Sylvania where he is. Computer, is Georgine Sylvania still in the medbay? There are no life signs for that designation. What are you talking about? How many life signs did you scan upon the arrival of the shuttle last night? There were no life signs detected aboard the foreign shuttlecraft. Nothing about this makes any sense. Computer, open this door, please. Authorization Hallsy, Gemini 92501. So dark in here. What's that? Mr. Hansen? Hello? Are you all right? Mr. Hansen, it's Commander Hallsy. Is everything okay? Computer, lights. I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it. I've never seen so many wires tangled up. Where's the switch? Oh, there it is. Huh. No noise. Hansen, power on. What? Why did you interrupt me in the middle of my charging cycle? Why do you need a charging cycle? Oh, Commander Hallsy, isn't it? What a pleasant surprise. What brings you by my quarters? I'm curious, mainly about you at the moment. Yes, well, I can imagine you may have a few questions. A few, yeah. So, an android, huh? You're pretty sophisticated. I've never seen one quite like you before. You stumble in your speech, and you even had body heat when I shook your hand last night. So tell me, where'd you come from? I don't think I should be answering any of these questions, Commander. All right, then. Allow me to make the matter a bit more clear. You can tell me your story, or I can blow you to smithereens. I am armed, you know, and according to our ship's computer, you're not considered alive. That is correct, sir. I'm only programmed to respond to situations according to the best algorithmic probabilities. I am not alive. I do not feel. I am not human. Good. That makes me feel better about taking you apart, circuit by circuit, if you don't tell me what you're doing here. Who built you? I was told not to reveal that information. Fine. Then I'll just ask Dr. Sylvania, who the computer also isn't picking up as a life sign. I'm sure she'll be happy to experience my methods of procuring information. Tell me, Unit Hansen, do your protocols prioritize Dr. Sylvania's safety over everything else? I imagine they would, given that you flew her all the way here. You were probably built to be her bodyguard, disguised as an old man. You might even be able to take my head off if only you were fully charged. But you're smart enough to know that with low power like you have right now, you wouldn't be able to move fast enough before I destroyed you. And then Sylvania would be left to fend for herself. So let's be out with it then. Just a little information. Who built you? Tell me, for the good doctor's sake. Dr. Sylvania built me. Ah, there now. That wasn't so hard, was it? She was skilled in computers as well as medicine, it seems. But why did she build you? Why was she in Epsilon for so long? What is she trying to accomplish here and now? Which question shall I answer first? The last one. What's she up to? She is experimenting with consciousness transference. I know that, but why? Why can't I pick up her life signs either? I'm surprised you don't already know, Commander. Wait a minute. Hallsy to Rodney. Come in. Dr. Rodney, come in, please. Oh my gosh. Hallsy to Bridge.
I need a security detail to guest quarters and another to the med bay. This is a code red emergency. Computer, med bay. Where are the code red lights? Please. Please don't let this be. Sylvania!
Commander, what are you doing here?
Don't even think about putting that helmet on. And get the other one off Rodney. What did you do to him?
I'd put that weapon down if I were you, Commander. Medical equipment is so fragile. Some of it is liable to tear a hole in the station if it hit from the wrong angle. Particularly this helmet. The whole machine is quite complex and slightly volatile.
Where's security? Where's the code red alarm?
Hansen is programmed to wirelessly jam signals. Convenient, isn't it?
Ah, of course. And don't think I missed your comment at dinner earlier. You were on the Destiny cruiser, weren't you? What happened to my grandparents?
Temper, Commander. I wondered if you were a Hallsy like the two I knew. Such a nice young couple. Your father really missed out on having them in his life. That alone almost kept me from moving forward with my plan. But I couldn't stop. My need for change far outweighed the consequences of those around me.
You with the saboteur. You killed my grandparents.
So sweet they were. He was sometimes fairly slow, though. Higher concepts didn't exactly come easily to him. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Stop talking about my family. I want answers. And I don't care what blows up, I will shoot you with or without them.
As if that would be the worst suffering I'd have to endure.
You've endured suffering. You blew up a ship with 200 crewmen aboard, have ruined their families' lives for generations.
Oh, be quiet, boy. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, I'd very much like to know, girl. You must be the oldest girl I've ever met. How did that happen?
I suppose it's about time that someone heard what I've had to go through. Besides, I would really rather not die.
According to the computer, you're not exactly alive.
I was once. In fact, Georgine Slovenia wasn't even my original name. But that was so long ago. Back when I lived in squalor. My family was nice enough, I suppose. They gave me what they could when I was young. But it wasn't enough. I wanted to be a machinist or a medic, but they couldn't afford to give me many experiences there. And when I told them I needed more, I was told that I could only have what I had. They thought I should consider a different path to make a more steady living. I knew then that they couldn't accept who I was.
That's not how it sounds to me. Not everyone can afford all of life's luxuries, but that doesn't mean they didn't want you to be yourself.
It sure seemed that way. They completely ruined my chances to be something more. I tried for years to enter the fleet after it was founded, but I was always rejected as a medic or an AI specialist. I didn't have the background they were looking for because I never had the money to invest in it, and my parents wouldn't. I was only ever offered low-level positions, just one of the crew, and I couldn't live with that.
You've got to work your way up. Push through your setbacks. That's what I had to do.
You're welcome for that, by the way. At least you can be proud of yourself. I hated who I was. I didn't feel right being me anymore. So I changed my name and created a fake portfolio with a machine I'd built from old parts. It was rudimentary, but it got the job done. Soon, I was aboard the Destiny cruiser.
But let me guess. That's not where it all stopped, is it?
But it was going to be. I wanted to be a normal member of the crew just as much as everyone else. But I was caught replicating too many items to build an AI that looked human. A sort of pet project of mine. I suppose I should have been more careful. Somebody was bound to notice the overuse of the replicator. Questions started getting asked, and I knew it was only a matter of time before they discovered that my records were fake. So, I took my half-finished AI in a shuttle, rigged the ship to explode by overloading the warp drive, and used that explosion to propel myself through the wormhole. I needed to complete my journey to become who I was always meant to be.
And that's how you wound up in the Epsilon sector.
More than that, it's how first contact wound up being made with your own sector about 40 years ago, once they finally developed the spacecraft to fly all the way over here. As you pointed out, Epsilon isn't exactly the prime real estate of the universe.
From bad stock you came, and to bad stock you returned.
On the contrary, I was happier there than I ever was here. I had finally found a place to live out my days.
80 years is a lot of days. You're looking pretty good for over 100 years old. But of course, that's not your original body, is it? You gave yourself a new one, a mechanical one.
I was injured in the crash, horribly disfigured. The residents of the planet I fell to didn't know the difference. They had never seen a human before. But I couldn't bear to look at myself like that. I had lost my status, my way home, and my identity in one fell swoop. Georgian Sylvania didn't really exist, and everyone who knew me before likely thought I was dead. I hated who I was even more, so I devised a new plan, putting myself to work in their labs and hospitals. I used their limited but effective technology to complete my AI. It took years, but it was perfect, human in every way, and I was finally accepted.
Perfectly human, except of course for the lack of life signs.
Yes, well, scanners were not nearly as good in my day, but the fleet has grown a lot in just a short time. And so has the technology here, and that's exactly what I need. You see, this helmet is not my first attempt. I managed to put myself in this mechanical body that you see now, young and energetic forever.
And you also built Hansen during that time. But why do you want out of your body if it's so perfect?
I thought it was perfect at the time, but things began to wear away over the decades. Parts rusted over or broke down, and I only had so many resources with which to fix it up. Believe me, I look much prettier on the outside than I do on the inside.
Oh, I can believe it.
And I came to realize very quickly that I could no longer feel. I have no senses. My body heat is generated artificially. I long to feel what it's like to be human again. I thought I was doing the best thing for myself I possibly could, but I've only grown to hate myself even more.
I'm sensing a pattern here. Seems to me you would have been happier if you didn't keep going out of your way to change yourself. I could have tried to change my name to hide who I really am, but I didn't. And even though that came with a rough road to commandership, I don't regret it a bit.
Again, you're welcome for all of that.
There's nothing wrong with who I am, and there wasn't anything wrong with who you were either. You weren't entitled to immediate specialist status, any more than I was the commander rank. All you had to do was push through and earn it.
You're wrong. I was destined to be something great. And now with Rodney's body and equipment, I can finally do that. I can build all the AI and have access to all the fleet's data that I want. I will be more than Georgine Slovenia, a nobody AI specialist. I will be Archibald Rodney, commander of the reanimated and AI armies. I will finally be everything I'm meant to be.
You're blind, Sylvania. You are already who you were meant to be. You are who you are, and you can't be something you're not.
Who are you to tell me who I can and cannot be?
It's not me. It's all a history. Just look at what happens when someone decides to break away from the norm and serve only himself while expecting the rest of the world to get on board. It usually doesn't turn out so well. But I think we've talked enough. It's time you put that helmet down and come over here before I'm forced to use this.
Oh, your lasers aren't powerful enough to take down this mechanical body.
No? Then I guess I'll have to settle for your machine up there.
What? No!
Come on, Doc. Let's get out of here. Computer, seal off the medbay now.
Henry, are you alright? What the heck happened up here? As soon as there was damage detected, we came running.
I'm alright. Check Rodney out.
You heard him, men. Get him to his quarters and call command for our fleet doctor. Stat! Now, are you going to tell me what just happened and why we're looking at a hole straight into open space?
Yeah, I will. I will. I've just got to call my folks first. I need to thank them.
Thank them? For what?
For never letting me let go of myself. I don't understand. Why did she have to change? There was nothing wrong with her. She could have had all that acceptance she was seeking from the world. If she could just have learned to accept herself.
The Twisted Corridor by Michael Lanier. This episode, To Be,
was written by Michael Lanier. The parts of Captain Jameson, Commander Hallsy, Dr. Rodney, and the computer were played by Michael Lanier, with the part of Dr. Sylvania being played by Abigail Collins. All directing, music, and editing was done by Michael Lanier, and sounds come courtesy of freesound.org, trekcore.com, and YouTube, with some Foley by Michael Lanier. Join us next time around the next wild and dark corner